Good day, everyone. So I hope you're enjoying your holidays. I'm here on my scuffed laptop, scuffed mic, as you can hear. But nonetheless, let's try and answer an interesting question. In Nilou Bloom teams, what should your build be for Kokomi? Should you go the Flower of Paradise route with EM healing bonus, a sort of like build, or should you just stick to the traditional Ocean Youth Clam set and potentially a Sacrificial Fragments weapon? Well, I'm going to be speaking from the higher investment sort of side, so assuming C2 Nilou at the minimum, C6 Nahida, C6 Kokomi. But if you want the F2P perspective, I'd highly recommend checking out Jamie's channel. He sort of discusses this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, but the current recommendations for most F2P players is that you actually stick to Kokomi's traditional build and you just sort of keep sacrificial fragments. And the reasoning being is that sacrificial fragments plus Nilou's sort of little EM that she gives you, plus the Dendro resonance that you'll get, plus if you've got Nahida signature weapon, you get like more EM, plus whatever. Just like all of these sources of EM can actually add up to be quite significant for Kokomi. And if you instead just stuck in too much EM, like EM builds on Kokomi, you get to a point of diminishing returns, and this is problematic because you lose out on healing, you also lose out on your Ocean Youth Clam set that could have contributed to damage, and you also lose out on single target damage that Kokomi could have added. And also sometimes the bloom ownership is ambiguous, in which case you won't even benefit from having built Kokomi like that, and hence having her as on a traditional build makes much more sense for an F2P. I think that sort of summarizes the argument for a F2P perspective. From a sort of non-F2P perspective, things do get quite a bit juicy and so on. So you'll see here I've got my Kokomi. This is like her artifacts. This is more or less her build. So if we quickly go and see what she sort of does, you'll see here, you can just sort of ignore these numbers here. These are just from Nilou and Nahida. But you can clearly see here that Kokomi that's Nahida's number. Here's the little thing that Kokomi's can do. Well, there you go, crit 75k damage. It's quite significant and so on. But more typically, you'll expect numbers in about the 38k range. I've actually summarized Kokomi's numbers here very neatly for you with the stacking of the Flower of Paradise. This is without any EM from Nahida's Q and so on. But effectively, if you look at the numbers, they're quite good, and especially if you can crit them, they can certainly add up to quite a bit of damage, if we're honest. If you look instead to Kokomi's like traditional build with the Ocean Youth Clam set, her blooms are significantly lower. And by the way, this is with the donut. I'm not running the sacrificial fragments at all. But this is just pure traditional Kokomi. You get blooms from like at about this level, and obviously her Ocean Youth Clam set gets maxed out, and of course her normals being bumped up by Nilou C2 gives you these values. Now it's kind of interesting because in, let's say, a 2-second interval, you did all of this damage and you triggered about 2 blooms. You effectively get, if you sort of add like the damage from these normals to your blooms, you effectively get the damage that you would have on the Flower of Paradise, plus some extra damage and the Ocean Youth Clam set. And this means that in a single target environment, your Kokomi with your traditional build will actually surpass your Kokomi with the Flower of Paradise build. It's only in lots of multi-wave situations where you're gonna crit with Nahida C2 that any one of these sort of things critting will very easily surpass out Kokomi's single target damage contribution. And hence my feeling, and this is just a gut feel, it's not really based off of any solid theory crafting, is that in an AoE environment, the Flower of Paradise actually makes more sense for Kokomi, whereas in a single target environment, I definitely just stick to a traditional build because it's clearly way stronger. I think the other thing that people need to realize is that a Kokomi with a C2 constellation has more than enough healing to keep your team alive. Well, basically, because Kokomi and Nilou have like high HP pools, healing is not a problem, but your other characters might have, let's say, 18k, and the moment they drop below half health, like 9k, Kokomi C2 kicks in, and effectively it can give you about 8k healing, which is more than enough in your EM healing sort of build to just top off your characters. You don't need the full 15k per jellyfish tick from Kokomi's like full set. So definitely her C2 makes up more than the loss that you would have gotten from losing out on HP percentage, in my opinion. This is always the interesting thing for me in single targets as well. Nilou's C2 constellation is so strong because any damage, so the moment you just activate Nilou's Golden Chalice effect, any Hydra member of your team that does Hydra damage to an enemy will decrease that opponent's resistance by 35%. And it's just like, it's unconditional. You don't need to reswirl it. It's not like Vivi said that cannot stack, that you'd have to refresh after about 10 seconds and so on. It's just the damage is just continuously there, and I find that this is really a significant bump up, especially for Kokomi mains that have like C6, because C6 gives you a 40% pretty much unconditional Hydra damage bonus, and together with the rest shred, well, now you've got a Kokomi that's got effectively the value basically the effective value of a Kazuha is now like conferred onto your Kokomi, and it's just so strong. And I think this is what makes her single target damage just so good. But obviously, it's not the Flower of Paradise will lose out on all of this. So yeah, I think from my perspective, C2 Nilou and C2 Nahida and all of the other things play very nicely with Kokomi's constellations. They give you a very good perspective as to the value of that additional healing, the additional like sort of attack speed that you get from Kokomi, and like the Hydro damage bonus. And this is why I'd also personally just recommend the traditional build over the Flower of Paradise. Unless you're doing something like really fast AoE speed runs, then you might want to have just the chance of getting those Nahida crit blooms, which will just be a bit faster than the damage output that you'll get from Kokomi's traditional build. But yeah, that is sort of what I have to say on the matter. I mean, obviously, there's a couple of more intricate talking points we can get into, but that would be more or less my gut feel on everything. It's quite interesting, and also does show you how well the game's been balanced by Hoyo. They certainly haven't undermined what they've done with Kokomi, and you certainly don't feel like, I invested all of this, into an R5 donut, all the artifacts and so on, and now, oops, just go to Flower of Paradise and you're better off. I like the fact that Hoyo somehow find a way to balance all of these things internally in such a way such that it does depend. It is situation dependent, and you still get a lot of value from just traditional standard Kokomi as you would have invested into her. Pretty cool. Let me know what you guys think, and happy holidays. I'm not going to record, it's the 23rd today, so tomorrow, 24th, 25th, you won't see me, but hopefully on the 26th and 27th, there'll be a new video. Keep well and have a great Christmas. Cheers.